Hello and welcome to another video by Rick Miracle, me. In my series I started in 2013, Freemasonry and Satanism, book reviews. I'm up to 281, that's what this book review will be. And that series 281 will be the number in the series that I put all of the videos for the Unpublished Phoenix Journals. I read this one entirely, Phoenix Journal 139, 113 pages, and you can't buy these because they were unpublished, but you can go to the Phoenix Journal website, fourwinds10.com, and find 125 unpublished journals, which are basically excerpts from the newspapers published by the Phoenix Project. And another one that I found here that I wanted to share that I've been reading is Phoenix Journal 162. Believe it or not, a whole thick book, 127 pages of research about the elite's focus and concern with depopulation. They think we're useless food eaters. I'm talking 127 pages, all the resources, all kinds of elite people. I'll give you an idea what it says in here. Karl Marx, the Fabian Society, George Orwell, Aldous Huxley, General Youthant, UN Secretary, Pope Paul, United Nations World Population Conference, Population Goals, Policies, Jimmy Carter's Message to Congress, Prince Philip of Great Britain. I think that was the guy who said if he came back after he died, he'd want to come back as a virus so he could kill everybody. Solution must be found to curb population. Russia reported producing disease agents for war. The Club of Rome, Iron Mountain, Depopulation of the Planet, Chapter 3. So I will be making a video on this book after I read more. But this particular video, series 281 in my series Freemasonry and Satanism book review, is 139, and I read it in its entirety. I'll flip to the back and just show you. So all the way towards the rear. So there's a plethora of information here. But I was going to talk about this. Architectural Masonry, the dark side of the Force. Strangely enough, I was watching Star Wars yesterday on my new subscription to the Disney movie channel with of course, the dark side of the Force. It looks like the sun is going down and it's getting darker in here. So I'll put a little light on and try to do a portion of this video today. Today is April 2nd, and we're all aware that the coronavirus is causing the President of the United States to declare that everybody stay at home, and restaurants, hair salons, gymnasiums, and so many businesses are closed. And apparently it's global. So when you talk about that, and you talk about the idea of a pandemic, and you talk about depopulation, are we talking about the same thing? And if we are talking about the same thing, who would be behind it? And it's in these Phoenix journals. I've been going over it. And you can find all of this on the Phoenix Journal website. And you can see on the left there the Phoenix Journals, Contact Magazine, the Liberator, the Express Archive. And I got a nice big thick book just of the index of what's at that website. And the unpublished journals, and then the journals, and the Liberator magazine, a newspaper magazine, Contact. So let me start this conversation and video with this one page that I have read, and as you can see that I highlighted, because it had some valuable information. And when you put it into the context of all the videos that I have done, and the fact that YouTube canceled my channel on July 2019, so that's 6, 7, 8, 9 months ago, along with a lot of other people's channels. And also a month or so ago, Rick Sanchez on RT News and Glenn Beck and many other people were talking about the Federal Reserve propping up the banking system with $500 billion a day. Meanwhile, President Donald Trump was on the campaign trail saying that the economy was robust and better than it has ever been. Bragging rights. So who's telling the truth? And then, of course, now we have the whole world shut down. And a couple weeks ago, the economy was supposed to be robust and great. Meanwhile, as I just said, apparently the insiders in the Federal Reserve and the elites were propping up the banking systems to the tune of $500 billion a day. That's a lot of money. And apparently they just passed a stimulus bill after shutting down the country for only a couple of weeks. So I'm just wondering why they need $2 trillion. And apparently there is 1,000 billion in a trillion. And I totaled up what they were saying they were going to give we the people, and it totals about 2 billion. And so if you get 1,000 billions per trillion, and they passed a stimulus package for 2.2 trillion, so that's 2,000 billion, more than that, it's 2.2 trillion. And if it takes 2 billion to fulfill their promise to give all the citizens $1,200 plus $600 for the children, that's 1 to 2 billion. So they're left over with 1,998 billion. And it just seems bizarre to me. And, you know, you got to ask yourself, what's behind all of this? And then also President Donald Trump said in one of his speeches, and he's doing the speeches every day right now, that he's thinking about calling Congress back so that they can pass another stimulus package. So what, it'll be another trillion, 2 trillion, more trillions? It just makes me wonder, they don't have this money. The United States already is in debt, 16, 15, 20, 30 trillion. And apparently it does have to be paid back, and it gets paid back by the taxes deducted from the citizens. And if it gets so astronomical that they have to go bankrupt and bankrupt the nation, where does that leave the rest of us when they're taking all these trillions out of taking out these loans that we're responsible for? It's just too bizarre to even contemplate, actually. But so I'm reading this stuff, and there's a lot of warnings in these unpublished journals, as well as a ton of material in the journals that were published that you can go on, use the book sites and find. You can see here a Phoenix Journal, The Death Rattle of Freedom, The Plan 2000, The Science of Man, Scientific Definition, Proof of God, The Cosmic Order of the Universe, Tracking Down the Killer and Other Forms of Murder, Threads of Silk, Bands of Steel, Bondage Within the Web. So there's just a ton of material in these books. Those were the published Phoenix Journals. And I've also been making videos on the newspapers that are on that website. Contact newspaper. The Real War is on the Mental Battlefield. The UFOs, the Grand Deception, the Coming New World Order. So I've been making videos on my new series, Year 2020 Rick Miracle Report, from these newspapers. Contact. We are moving into the neck of the funnel. The Phoenix Liberator. Bush sells out to the Soviets. So what happened during the 90s and from 2000 to 2010 and from 2010 to 2020? What happened from 1960 to 1970, 1970 to 1980, 1980 to 1990? It's in these magazines, and it's some crazy stuff that everybody needs to know. British mind control plot to overthrow America. Travis Stock, Freemasonry, Nazis, MK Ultra. So you get the idea. They got these newspapers. They got these magazines that were published. They got the unpublished ones I've been reading. And this series in Freemasonry and Satanism, the number 281 is allocated to all of the videos that I decide to make from these unpublished Phoenix Journals. And FYI, on the 4winds10.com and other Phoenix Journal websites, if you look up the keyword Phoenix Journals, all these newspapers, Contact, Liberator, published journals, unpublished journals, and much more is all available free. PDF, you can download it to your computer. And I suspect at some point, and I hope not because I'm exposing this stuff, these websites will be taken down. The fulfillment of the book 1984, George Orwell was it? Where they had banned books and people were caught and they're with books hidden in the attic and they would be sent to prison and tortured or killed. And so this is part of the future. And also we already know last year and the year before, websites and even Wikipedia, the owner of that was arrested and websites were taken down, YouTube accounts taken down, Twitter accounts taken down, Facebook accounts censored. So it's all been in the news. So there is a mental battle going on, a consciousness battle. And so what you think you believe it or not, is probably, if you have not been a researcher and are not awake, pretty much a lot of what you believe is probably false. And that's what this page is going to talk about in this unpublished journal that you can find on the Phoenix Journal website, 4winds10.com. Look at the index for the journals and you'll see something, an icon that says unpublished journals. There's 125 of them, about 100 to 200 pages each. And I highly encourage people to download it to their computers, put it on a hard drive, put it on a memory stick, I don't care, put it on CDs. But I do suspect the information could disappear. And a couple times when I went to different links on the websites, they did disappear. And I did send an email to the person in charge of the website. And apparently it showed back up. But let's talk about architectural masonry. And let's talk about who's controlling the world. And who thinks there's too many people on the planet. And who's obsessed with depopulation, accomplishing it and taking the world to about 500 million instead of 6+ billion, so they say. So apparently they have to find some convenient way to fumigate the planet to get rid of all these unwanted, useless food eaters. And I'm seeing that they're dumping tons of stuff into the sky even today. I've been photographing and videoing it and publishing videos on the chemtrailing, sky spraying, and of course on the HARP microwave transmitters and the 5G microwave transmitters And apparently Elon Musk has a contract to put 40,000 satellites in space to bathe the planet in microwave transmitters, wireless, Wi-Fi frequencies that can cause apparently flu-like symptoms. But you mix the Wi-Fi with the heavy metals dumped into the sky and a lot of the other poor quality foods and beverages. So you have a weakened immune system from the humans, especially with all the strangeness and fear also causes a weaker immune system. The heavy metals in the sky and biological stuff in the air and the radioactive materials in the air. I do have a radioactive meter that I leave on, and I can see that it goes up and down. You can look on the internet and see all the people across the country with these meters, and you can see the different counts and the hot spots. And that they don't alert you when it's a hot spot, when the numbers are so high that it qualifies for evacuation. So you got radiation, you got biological weapons, you got heavy metals, toxins in the air, you got microwave transmissions coming from every which way, and you have poor quality food and beverages. So you do have a weakened immune system, and then you have false information, propaganda, anti-God, and pro-rainbow coalition, and all this other weirdness, threats of terrorism, sustainability, global cooling, global warming, climate change, poles shifting, and so much more. There's so much of it that it does affect humans physically when they are mentally stressed out. That's a fact. So you can take a combination of everything I said, and a lot of it seems intentional. There's so much in these books here. These elites say what they're going to do, say what their concerns are. 127 pages, a whole book dedicated to the research done by the Phoenix Project on all the people who talk about depopulating the planet for the past 200-300 years. So who's behind it? Here's another journal, the one I'm reading from right now, 139. But let me read from it now that I've set the stage here. Who's behind it? What are they doing? What do they want? And we all know they want a global world order. We know they have infiltrated all of our governments, the financial system, and so much more. We all know the whole world's in lockdown right now, which is kind of, in my opinion, feeding right into the hands. Even the astrologers and a lot of other people talking on the YouTube videos I've been watching say that the world will never return to the way it was before this coronavirus issue. So when they take us down this road that we're all on, and everybody gets a free check, and then they're broke and they're hungry, and the system gets unfolded, and they'll get more free checks, but of course they'll have to report to some kind of work, and this communitarianism type of government, a combination between capitalism and communism, will have evolved as per their plan. And apparently there could be some weapons obviously in this material, including the one on depopulation. It clearly says in here the elderly need to die, and some of our leaders recently have been saying that the elderly people would be happy to die to save the economy and the planet. You can't make this stuff up. But you can read these books and find out that it seems to be true. So among the British founders of this Grand Lodge, as honored by King George I, were such Protestants as Christopher Wren, Dr. John Theophilus de Sigoulis, can't say these names, Dr. James Anderson, George Payne. Also involved were wealthy individuals connected to both British intelligence and the Bank of England. And as the Jewish writer of the last century, Bernard Lazare, admitted in his History of the Trials and Tribulations of this Race, Anti-Semitism, page 339, there were Jews around the cradle of Freemasonry. So a well-known Jewish writer, Bernard Lazare, 100 years ago, whatever, wrote in the book that the Jews were around the cradle of Freemasonry. And we all know there are Freemasonic lodges in our towns, in our neighborhoods, in our cities, huge, big buildings that can compete with the biggest church buildings. So the Jews were around the cradle of Freemasonry. And if you look at some pictures on Yahoo image site and look up Freemasons in King Solomon's Temple, you'll see a lot of the Freemasonic lodges building models of King Solomon's Temple. And if you're aware of this, and maybe you're not, but apparently 60, 70 years ago, they introduced a legislation in America making the Noahide laws, that would be Jewish, the laws, religious laws of the United States. And we're not supposed to have we're supposed to have separation of church and state. So how can they pass legislation making the Noahide laws the laws of the land? And of course, most people know that, generally speaking, the Jews deny that Jesus was the Savior. The Noahide laws say that if you believe in a false idol, a false Savior, then you are punishable by decapitation off with your head. And there's YouTube videos and research you can look up that apparently the government has purchased the guillotines. So apparently there is a fulfillment of biblical prophecy taking place where these Satanists are actually taking over the planet, as it says in Revelation 2.9 and 3.9. Revelation is, of course, the last book in the Bible, only about 20 pages, and you can look up 2.9 and 3.9 if you don't know what it says. So apparently it's all true. It's in the Bible. It's in these Phoenix journals, published and unpublished. And I'm about to read it right now. And the Jewish people admit it. But if you talk about even what the Jewish people say and admit and put in their books and share that, they want to accuse you of being an anti-Semite. So you can't talk about what they say. Isn't that interesting? So anyway, so the Jews were around the cradle of Freemasonry. I remember it was the Freemasonic and the Illuminati peoples who were behind the French Revolution, which was an insane situation, pulling all of the leaders and people they considered the enemy out of their houses and decapitating them, decapitating the king, and so many more. And the same thing with the British Revolution, decapitating the king and so many more. And of course with the Russian Revolution, apparently killing up to 100 million Christians and other good people and destroying all the Christian churches. Not to mention the Chinese Revolution. And I could go on and on and on, and World War I and World War II and 9/11. And apparently these people I'm talking about are behind all of this. That's a lot to say. But let me read from the book. This is confirmed by Nestor Webster in her book on secret societies, who stated, "Thus it is said that the preceding century, the coat of arms now used by the Grand Lodge has been designed by the Amsterdam Jew Jacob Jehuda Templar, T-E-M-P-L-O, Temple, colleague of Cromwell, friend of the Kabbalist." So I think Cromwell was a magician type of guy who, behind the king's back, conspired to have bring about the revolution and have the king beheaded. What a name, Cromwell. So we're seeing here who's behind it. Manasseh ben Israel, according to the Jewish Encyclopedia. So that's all in this material I just said, that the Grand Lodge had been, the coat of arms of the Grand Lodge had been designed by the Amsterdam Jew, Judah Jehuda Templo, colleague of Cromwell's friend and Kabbalist, and apparently Manasseh ben Israel. And all this is in the Jewish Encyclopedia, which apparently was first published in English for all of us to purchase in 1973. I have the entire set, and I made a lot of videos on from the Encyclopedia Judaica, Jewish Encyclopedia, the Encyclopedia Judaica. And recently I've been buying the 2006 Encyclopedia Judaicas just to see if they've changed any of the information. And I should be making videos on that eventually. So the code is entirely composed of Jewish symbols, according to Lucian Wolf's Translations of the Jewish Historical Society of England, Volume 2, page 156. And if that weren't proof enough, in his curiously titled 1722 manuscript, so that would be the year 1722 manuscript, Long Livers, which he dedicated to the Grand Lodge of London, author Sambers tells of a mysterious illumination and of an equally mysterious hierarchy, working through the higher grades of Masonry, the secret esoteric language being used, that of a Kabbalist alchemical code. A Kabbalist alchemical code. Let's just pay attention to those three words for a second. Kabbalist alchemical code. Kabbalah is apparently where the Talmud, one of the most holy books of the Jews, is the Talmud, and apparently it is a derivative. It was derived from the Kabbalah. And you can go look on your computer and find books on Kabbalah magic. So the most holy book, the Talmud, and the Zohar were derived from the Kabbalah, and you can find books on Kabbalah magic. And apparently President Donald Trump had a Kabbalah teacher, and apparently President Donald Trump's ex-wife wrote a book on the Kabbalah. So you have the Kabbalist and all of the people like the Freemasons, Skull and Bones, President George Bush's, and other people were in the Freemasonic organizations, and their religious philosophies are the Kabbalah. And you can find books called Kabbalah Magic, and I keep on repeating this. And apparently I associate Kabbalah magic with Satanism, demonism, and fallen angels and anti-God. So alchemical code, I said Kabbalistic alchemical code. Alchemical, of course, is using chemicals and biologicals as weapons, or to change things like lead into gold. And a lot of the magicians were practicing alchemy. And alchemy, again, is with toxins, heavy metals, and other kinds of chemicals and biologicals. So you're mixing the biologicals and the chemicals with the Kabbalistic magic. And these are the people who control our world. Just saying, it's all here for, if you want to pause your computer and read it. I don't make stuff up. Well, let me keep on reading and throwing in my 2 cents. It's all right here, and this is series 281, so that's 281 in my series of book reviews, and a lot of the authors wrote more than one book, so 281 would certainly exceed 300 books that I've read and made videos on. And I read books for almost 10 years before I started making videos. And a lot of those books that I read, I forgot where they are. I got 2,000 books. And I didn't methodically go back to books that I had read to make book reviews on. When I started making book reviews in 2013, I just picked up right then and there books I was reading. So the 7, 8, 9 years, there's a lot of books I read I don't remember I read, and I need to go back and review my library. But this series is 281, so it's obviously over 300, and that's just in this series. I have another series, the New World Order Media and Press Releases, where I was collecting newspaper articles, press releases, and other research material for every year, 2005, 2006, 2007, 2008, and putting it in boxes. It stacks up over 10 feet. So there's another source besides the collection of videos I have, which certainly exceeds 10,000 that I've watched, and so much more research material besides the photographs and videos of the dumping of stuff in the sky every year since 2005, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, and the year 2020. I'm still videoing the stuff they're dumping in the sky and publishing the videos. So who are these Kabbalistic alchemical code is the religion philosophy of these people who control our planet, apparently tied in with the Jewish people, and of course not all Jewish people. Anyway, so back to the article here, the book. Furthermore, as revealed by the French author Leon de Poussins in his important 1928 work, The Secret Power Behind Revolution, Freemasonry originated in England, where the Judaizing Kabbalist grafted it onto the old corporations of Masons, workers from the dark primordial days of King Solomon. So we all know in 1776 that the United States declared its independence from Britain. So back in 1776, obviously the British Revolution had already occurred, and that they had decapitated the king. So the Freemasonic Illuminati Jewish elite were in charge of Britain, and in 1776 we declared independence from Britain. And so apparently they had intentions for revenge to gain the control of America, and it appears quite clearly that they have. Apparently they took control of the money supply a couple times, and I believe since Abraham Lincoln in the 1860s, the corporations were denied, and they were not in control of the USA money supply, 1860s. And a couple presidents were attempted assassinations. I think one or two might have been killed, poisoned, or whatever, trying to take over control of the USA money supply. But the senators in the House of Representatives and the American leaders knew better. But finally, they did regain control of the USA money supply in 1913, 6 months prior to World War I. So they had to infiltrate and bribe and put their own people in charge to retake control of the USA money supply. So they needed it for World War I, and after World War I, they managed, as they were in charge of the USA money supply, they brought us the Great Depression. If you do any research at all, there was a Great Depression all over the world, and they had everybody suffering and putty in their hands, preparing for World War II. And apparently, according to Albert Pike, who wrote to his friend Mazzini, a high-level Freemasonic man in Italy, that it would take 3 world wars to bring about the global world order that they desire. And apparently, even Albert Pike was into the occult and had communicated with these invisible beings called masters, demons, fallen angels, whatever you want to call them. So that's how they can see into the future. The occult, witchcraft, demons. Where do you think they get the information from? What about the Bible and the prophets and angels, Gabriel, Michael speaking to people? Do you believe all that? You better believe it. So these invisible entities come in 2 flavors. The ones from God and the ones from Lucifer and Satan. The evil ones and the good ones. makes you want to wish that Star Trek was real and you could just say, beam me up, Scotty, get me off this crazy planet. And apparently in God's world, that's not so far-fetched. It's in the Bible. So apparently they have extracted people from the planet and brought them back. And we are spiritual beings. So when we die, we really don't have to fear, as long as we have our ducks in a row and we recognize and accept God as our leader or creator and not deny God. So that's another story. And as Jesus said in the Bible, he who believes in me shall be saved. So we all know you can't save the flesh. We're all going to die eventually. But it is your soul in this other world that you want to be in, and you want to be in heaven. You don't want to be in Hades or hell. And maybe the future earth will be that hell, and the rest of the people will be extracted and taken to heaven. Just a sidebar there, when you're talking about these Freemasons, Illuminati, and corporations, and the elite people, banksters, controlling everything, including the militaries right now, the hospital system right now, and all this other stuff, the banking system, etc., and forcing everybody to sit at home right now. You just have to wonder, what the heck is going on? When have they ever quarantined the entire planet? And this isn't the first time we've had any kind of biological disaster, whether it's Ebola or other influenzas, some killing 30, 40, 60, 90,000 people or more. They didn't quarantine the world. So it just causes me to have concern, especially when I read books like this other one here, that the whole thing is about depopulation. And then, of course, you have the Georgia, USA guidestones that say they want to have a population of 500 million. So there's plenty of evidence. Even Bill Gates talks about depopulation, and so many other elites in the Bilderberger groups. And I have all that information, and I will be sharing it in future videos. So here we go. So the Freemasons are involved with the King Solomon's Temple. They introduced it everywhere throughout Europe over the 3 decades. In the book, Secret Societies and Subversive Movements, we also read the foundation of the Grand Lodge in London had been followed by the inauguration of the Masonic lodges on the continent. In 1721 at Mons, in 1725 in Paris, I guess Mons is a place in Britain, M-O-N-S, in 1728 in Madrid. So these Masonic lodges were popping up and taking control everywhere in the 1700s. And we know a lot of things happened in the 1800s. And of course we know what happened in the 1900s, 2 world wars. And then of course in 2001, right away coming out of the gate, they had 911. And so these people are behind it, and according to this material, they want and they will have their global world order. It's everywhere in the media, cashless society, global currency. The Pope has mentioned a global religion. They're all in on it, and we're all sitting in the soup, and we better get our hats on and understand who and what we are, because they're betting on most people not being aware. So they had it in 1731, these Masonic lodges, the Grand Lodge of London taking over, The Hague and Hamburg, Germany. But, says the author, the Grand Lodge in Paris did not receive a warrant till 1743. And the men who founded this lodge, far from being non-political, were Jacobite leaders engaged in active schemes for the restoration of the Stuart dynasty. So, just for another tidbit of information, in the 1500s, 1550, 1560, all of the Jews were banished from Spain, Italy, Britain, France, German area, all those countries. because of religious incompatibility, they were finding a lot of dead bodies from the human sacrifice rituals. So they were all banished, and they went up to Scotland and north area and over to the Ukraine and Georgia and Russia and Poland. And that was in the late 15 to the late 1500s. Everybody knows this. So all of the Jews in all of this part of the world over here were banished. And they went north and they went east. And they was conspired to get back, and they managed to infiltrate the government of France and Britain and the other governments, and have the French and the British kings beheaded. So by the 1600s, they were back in. And of course, during the 1700s, they were expanding all the Masonic lodges. And of course, we know what happened in the 1800s, Civil War in the United States. And there were civil wars all over this whole area. They were pretty busy. All right, so back to this thing here. They introduced it everywhere throughout Europe over the 3 decades. In the book, Secret Societies and Subversive Movements, we also read, the foundation of the Grand Lodge in London had been followed by the inauguration Masonic lodges in all those places I just mentioned. And then I just mentioned that the Grand Lodge in Paris did not receive a warrant until 1743. And the men who founded this lodge, far from being non-political, were Jacobite, that's a Jewish group of people, leaders engaged in active schemes to restore the Stuart dynasty. So they wanted to put their people as the royal family in Britain. The leader of this latter group we find was Charles Radcliffe, who had been imprisoned with his brother, the ill-fated Lord Derwentwater, who had been executed on Tower Hill in England in 1716. Charles had succeeded in escaping from Newgate and made his way to France, where he assumed the title of Lord Derwentwater himself. It was this Lord Derwentwater, afterwards executed for taking part in the 1745 rebellion, who with several other Jacobites is said to have founded the Grand Lodge of Paris in 1725 and himself to become a Grand Master. So far with my reading, knowing full well that the politicians like the Bushes and everybody else comes from these secret societies, whether it's Council of Foreign Relations, the Freemasonic organizations, Illuminati, elite, wealthy families. And if we look at history, what has happened, and we know who is behind what has happened, and there's plenty of evidence what the future is supposed to bring, the global world order, and we know without a doubt there is much material out there about the desiring to get rid of most of the useless food eaters. Their version of a global world order and a planet Earth to be their utopia doesn't include their responsibility to house and feed 6 billion people. It's just not in the plans. And it's all in these books and materials that anybody can read their obsession and concern with that issue. And they managed to control it to some degree in the past with all the wars that they did. And they would have these wars against kingdom from kingdom, and one of the goals was to kill off the population, the peasants, the slaves, the workers. And apparently throughout history, on numerous occasions, they were not, they did not refrain from using some kind of biological weapons and other means to cause famine and plagues. And even in the early days of the United States, they gave the Indians blankets with the diseases in the blankets so that the Indians would fall for these plagues and die. All right, a little bit more here to finish up my 1-hour video from this one page in this book. Thus we have the strange situation of the London Freemasons, whose patron was the King of England. So after they had the King John, I guess it was, beheaded, they put their own king in it. Their own king, as I just said, who was a supporter of the Freemasons, who, as it said earlier in here, the fifth sentence down from a book written by Bernard Lazare, that there were Jews around the cradle of Freemasonry. And so we know there are also these Jewish people who are behind the Illuminati. And I certainly don't intend to say that it's all Jews, because in the Jewish world there are different cults or religion organizations of Jews. For example, the Talmud is basically the Old Testament. So there are Jews who follow the Old Testament, the Ten Commandments, and they're Talmud Jews. Maybe call them Shepherdetic Jews, original Hebrews. Then there's the kingdom of, right here where my finger is, Khazaria, north of the Middle East, north. A huge kingdom, pretty much this size where my hand is right here, this whole area, was the Khazars. And over here, as you can see, this is the size of the United States. So this whole area north of the Middle East was the Khazars. They all converted to Judaism, but they didn't go for the Torah Judaism. They went for the Talmud Judaism. And the Talmud Judaism, of course, is derived from the Kabbalah. And you can find books on Kabbalah witchcraft and Kabbalah magic. You get it? So when you talk about their God, you know, it's not the God of the New Testament, the Father of Jesus, if Jesus was also God, and the Holy Spirit. It's the anti-God, the Antichrist, apparently, according to even Revelation 2.9 and 3.9 in the Bible, and it's so much more material. But let me read here so you can kind of get a picture of what happened. So, like I said a moment ago, during the 1500s, from all this area, all the Jews were banished. They went east and they went north. And then in the 1600s, they all came back and took over these countries, and they were part of the founding of the United States, and they were cast out of here during the Declaration of Independence from Britain, and then they managed to come back and take control of our country. And for the past 100 years or so, we've had revolutions and presidents and leaders in South America, North America, Africa, China, all over the world, killed in plans to bankrupt countries. John Perkins wrote a book called Confessions of an Economic Hitman. I made book reviews on his books. So all this is the truth. You can find it. And this is just a synopsis on this one page here. You can read all of this stuff in details, or of course you can just go to 4winds10.com and look up the Phoenix Journals and download them. Look up the Unpublished Phoenix Journals and download them. Look up the Liberator magazine, download them, free PDF, Contact magazines, PDF, free, download them, and so much more. And get all of this on your computer, because it could disappear and people won't know what the truth is. And I'm certainly not going to say, believe blindly everything that's in these Phoenix Journals. Apparently, a lot of the material and commenting in these journals is communication, apparently, with some higher evolved beings called Anton, Hanton, and other names. So if you don't want to believe that, have at it. But the material that they expose here is verifiable. So let me try to finish this here. So thus we have the strange situation of the London Freemasons, whose patron was the King of England, authorizing the creation of the offshoot lodges across the Channel in the country, which gave refuge to the supposed Jacobite enemies who were efforting to overthrow King George II. Therefore, while the English Freemasons were seeking to undermine the French aristocrats, the leaders, the French Freemasons were plotting the same thing against England. In each case, the intelligence services of both countries provided the necessary input to aid in these conspiracies in their causes. So think about this for a minute. If you know anything about your map up here. So here's France, and to the north is Britain, right next door to each other. Britain, France. Of course, over here in the orange is Germany. You can see why they had to destroy Germany. And you can see Italy over here and Spain. So the Freemasons in Britain were working to destroy the aristocrats, the king, in France. And in France, the Freemasons were working to destroy the king and the leadership in Britain. So the Freemasons in both countries back then, 1700s, in Britain were working to destroy France, the leadership, and have the king beheaded. And the Freemasons in France were working to destroy the king and the leadership. So both countries had Freemasons, and they were working in cahoots with each other, communicating with each other to kill each other's leadership and kings. And of course they do that today. They have control of our country and our world. All right, so I got about another 8 minutes to talk here. Basis of Freemasonry. Just for the record, all of Freemasonry is based on the structure of King Solomon's Temple. Now remember, President Donald Trump recognized Jerusalem as the capital of Israel, and that was a big problem because that's where the old ruins of King Solomon's Temple sit. And on that site is the Dome of the Rock, the holy site for the Islamic people, the Muslims. And so the previous recognized capital of Israel here was Tel Aviv, but they needed to have Jerusalem designated as their capital because they do want to rebuild King Solomon's Temple to fulfill biblical prophecy. So if anybody doesn't think this is all about the Bible and all about God and godly beings and satanic and demon beings, they call it a cosmic battle. So in other words, we all have to choose. And I like that word. I come up with this idea. You know, I talk about good and evil to people and they start snickering. So another way to think about it is order or chaos. Do we want to live in a world of order, family values, you know, regular police departments, and not the government being involved in drug trades and economic theft from the people running the Federal Reserve and controlling the stock market? Order or chaos is another way to think about good and evil. And apparently the people who were cast out of heaven were more into chaos, which if you were God and you were in heaven and these other people were trying to rebel and cause all kinds of disturbances, even in the heaven world, and they had to be cast out, and now they're in charge of our situation here on planet Earth, as we can see here. And the Freemasonic, Illuminati, Kabbalah, etc. There's many words we could use. Secret societies, occults, Satanism. It's part of their religions. So the Judaized Kabbalah, Moffat, of the Tree of Life. So a lot of people are into this New Age stuff, Tree of Life. And they don't understand when they talk about these different spheres, the Tree of Life, is they're meditating on these spheres that these beings are in. And the higher they go up the tree of life, the higher level of beings that they are meditating and doing satanic rituals to get favors from. And even it's common knowledge that King Solomon had a six-pointed ring on his hand, the Star of David that's on the Israeli flag, that he could use to call forth demons, and that's where he got his power. And if you look up Moloch on Yahoo image site, it's this big monster holding out his hands, and they're feeding him children to eat. And they have rituals where they burn children in fire. But anyways, on the big Moloch being, also depicted as an owl or a bull, there's a six-pointed star. There's no shortage of information. I've been making a lot of videos over the years. So I keep finding more books and more information, and it continues to support the information I've been finding, verifying the information. All right, their modern temples are all aligned due east and west, as are all pagan structures in ancient Egypt. They hold in special veneration the two stone pillars that stood on the porch before Solomon's temple. The left pillar being known as bows, placed on a sinister side as a symbol for the moon, representing Satan. So that if you see your Freemasonic lodge in your city or your town, there's these two big columns. So the one on the left is called bows, has a symbol of the moon on it. It represents Satan. The one on the right has a picture of the sun on it. It represents Lucifer. It's in these books here. The right pillar as a symbol of the sun representing Lucifer. Contrary to what you may have been led to believe, these two demonic entities are not one and the same. They are not actually enemies, but rivals in the age-old battle for total subjection and control of planet Earth. I guess I'm speaking loudly. I got some chicks in a box on the patio here. Quiet! Go to sleep. The sun is going down. We put a cover on the box and they go to sleep. Alright, so anyways, apparently it says here in bold letters. So I just told you who these columns represent. Freemasons, Illuminati, the story about the French and British and Italians and Germans all over this part of Europe, banishing the Jews who went north and who went east in the 1500s, and they came back in the 1600s by bribing and infiltration and had the King of Britain and the King of France beheaded, and apparently they regained control of the United States, and they have their henchmen and leaders as presidents and leaders of all these countries everywhere. The battles have been going on all over Africa, Cecil Rhodes, Australia has been taken over also, all over China, which is communist. We all know this. Apparently, India, all these countries all over the world. And it makes you wonder about Russia. Did they really lose control of Russia, or is that just another deception? And if I had to believe or make a decision, I would say that they never lost Russia. They still control it. And they play a lot of this propaganda news media back and forth, battling and bickering and threatening, just to keep all of the people off balance and confused. But it says here, hold this in your hearts. You may be able to begin to figure out who is doing what to whom. Who would I rather see in charge? Well, on an individual basis, survival basis, Lucifer. So you got a battle between Lucifer and Satan. Who would you want in charge? So according to this bold letter is Lucifer. For Lucifer doesn't bring pain and suffering, unless you get out of line. Satanists are insanely evil in all aspects of life. There is a major overlapping, but what you have now is a playoff as to who gets to be what to whom. So on earth, I guess we have three choices. Lucifer, Satan, or decide neither one of them, or God. I, of course, choose God, and I believe Jesus was sent from the heavenly, cosmic, spiritual realm to teach us. And the other religions, there were angels, prophets communicating. Think of prophet, the angel Gabriel was talking to Muhammad, and that's how he came up with the religion of Islam. So all these religions, even the Buddhists, even the Hindus, or even Zoroastrianism, it's all been communication with otherworldly beings and trying. And if you did a comparative religious course like I did in community college, you know that most of the religions have the similar commandments: thou shalt not steal, thou shalt not kill, etc. So the good information came from the spiritual world in almost all religions, but in the same time, the demonic entities were trying to combat against that and tempt people and lead them astray and away. So I guess you could say it seems like it's a battle for the souls. And so that's where we are with all this craziness in the world. So if you know that it's a battle for the souls, and you know that you're human, you're not getting off of planet Earth alive, you can choose God and choose righteousness and choose to do the right thing, not kill, steal, and all of that in your heart, and love people instead of hate people. That's a key thing. Love people instead of hate people. So you can't take revenge, you can't kill people, because you are going to die eventually. And which way you choose, the Lucifer satanic world or God's world, the chaos and anarchy or order and the Ten Commandments, it's pretty simple. And if you stick with the God world, and you can watch whatever they're doing on this planet, and you can almost laugh about it, knowing full well that you're going to be fine. So fear, in my opinion, is not an option. It's unnecessary. It's just having the confidence to know the truth. And it took me years to figure it out. I'm like everybody else. I didn't know what to believe. But after doing research for 15 years and book reviews since 2013, and reading so many books and magazines and press releases and research material and watching videos, after a while, with so much, you start to get it. And you go, oh my, isn't that crazy? I never had to do all this research. All I had to do was read the Bible, and I could have got the truth coming out of the gate. But the propaganda out there, the TV programming, newspapers, and the school system, they have people so confused, nobody knows what to believe. Thank you for watching my video. Rick Miracle reporting.